The lions roar, the untold truth of Zlatan Ibrahimović. The broken streets of Rosengård, he stole bicycles to survive. He fought grown men at 8 years old. He wore shoes held together with duct tape. And then, against every odd, every statistic, every person who told him he was nothing, he became a god. But here's what nobody tells you about gods. They bleed. They fall. And when the world stops watching, they disappear into the shadows they came from. This is not a fairy tale. This is the story of Zlatan Ibrahimović, the boy who conquered the world, the man who learned that conquest means nothing when the battle ends. The beginning. Rosengård, 1989 Rosengård. Say that name to anyone in Sweden and watch their face change. It's not just a neighborhood in Malmö, it's a warning. A place where immigrant families stack on top of each other in concrete towers that look like prisons from the outside. Where the smell of a dozen different cuisines fights for space in narrow hallways. Where police sirens are the neighborhood lullaby. Where dreams go to die before they're even born. This is where Zlatan Ibrahimović learned to breathe. 8 years old. Torn jeans, a football that had lost half its air 3 months ago, shoes that were 2 sizes too big, stolen from his older brother, held together with tape his mother found in a dumpster. His father, Shefik, was somewhere, probably drunk, probably angry, probably forgetting he had children. His mother, Jurka, worked herself to exhaustion cleaning houses for rich Swedish families who looked at her like she was invisible. Zlatan didn't have a childhood. He had survival training. The streets of Rosengård weren't just rough. They were a testing ground. Every corner had someone ready to take what little you had. Every day was a negotiation between who you were and who you needed to become to make it to tomorrow. But here's what most people miss about places like this. They don't just break you. If you're strong enough, if you're angry enough, if you refuse to bow, they forge you into something unbreakable. And Zlatan, he refused to bow. The football that changed everything. There's a moment in everyone's life where the path splits. Most people don't even see it happening. They drift into the version of themselves that circumstances create. But some people, the rare ones, they grab destiny by the throat and force it to bend. For Zlatan, that moment came on a Tuesday afternoon in 1989. He was playing football on a patch of concrete between 2 apartment blocks. The goal was a wall with 2 stones marking the posts. His shoes were falling apart. His stomach was empty. He hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. But none of that mattered when the ball was at his feet. The way he moved wasn't normal for an 8-year-old. It wasn't even normal for most adults. He didn't just kick the ball. He controlled it, commanded it, made it dance like it was an extension of his body. Other kids played football. Zlatan spoke to it in a language only he understood. An older man was watching. His name was Per. He wasn't a scout. He wasn't anyone important. Just a local coach for Malmö's youth team who happened to take a shortcut through Rosengård that day. He stopped, stood there for 10 minutes, watched this skinny immigrant kid with taped shoes perform magic on broken concrete. "Hey kid," Per called out. "You play for any team?" Zlatan stopped, looked at him with those eyes that would later intimidate defenders across Europe. Eyes that said, "I don't trust you, but I'm listening." "No." "You want to?" Zlatan shrugged. He'd learned early that wanting things was dangerous. Hope was a luxury for people who had something to lose. Come to training on Saturday, 6 a.m., Malmö FF Youth Academy. Don't be late. Per walked away. Didn't look back. Didn't make promises. Didn't try to inspire him with speeches about potential. And maybe that's why Zlatan showed up. The academy, where talent meets reality, Saturday morning. 5:45 a.m. Zlatan stood outside the Malmö FF Youth Academy gates. The building looked like a palace compared to Rosengård. Grass that was actually green. Nets that weren't torn. Other kids arriving in cars their parents drove. Clean jerseys. Proper boots. Zlatan had his taped shoes and a borrowed shirt that smelled like his brother's cigarettes. He almost turned around. Almost went back to the streets where he understood the rules. But something stopped him. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was the small, desperate voice in every poor kid's head that whispers, "What if this is your only chance?" He walked in. The other kids looked at him. Not with curiosity, with judgment. They saw the shoes. They saw the clothes. They saw immigrant written all over him. In Sweden, integration was a beautiful concept on paper. In reality, in spaces like this, you were tolerated, not welcomed. The training started, and within 15 minutes, everything changed. Zlatan didn't just play. He dominated. Every touch was precise. Every movement had purpose. He made 12-year-olds look like they'd never seen a football before. He embarrassed kids who'd been training at the academy for years. And he did it all with the same cold expression that would later become his trademark. No celebration, no smile. Just the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly what he was worth. The coach, Henrik, pulled him aside after training. "Where did you learn to play like that?" "The streets." "No formal training?" "No," Henrik nodded slowly. He'd been coaching youth football for 20 years. He'd seen talented kids. He'd seen kids with potential. But this was different. This was raw genius wrapped in anger and hunger. This was a kid who played like every game might be his last chance to prove he deserved to exist. "You're on the team," Henrik said. "Be here every Saturday, every Tuesday. Don't miss a session." Zlatan didn't say thank you. He just nodded and walked away. Because in his world, gratitude was weakness, and he was done being weak. The impossible divide training at Malmö FF meant living in two worlds. On Saturdays and Tuesdays, he was a footballer, a prospect, someone with potential. The rest of the week, he was still the kid from Rosengård. Still dodging trouble, still watching his parents tear each other apart, still going to bed hungry more nights than not. His teammates didn't understand him. They tried at first, invited him to birthday parties in houses with gardens, offered him rides home. But Zlatan knew what they'd see if they came to Rosengård. The shame of it burned hotter than any ambition, so he kept his distance, built walls, became the kid who was talented but difficult, gifted but angry. Everyone could see he had something special. No one could get close enough to understand why he played like he was fighting for his life. Because he was. Football wasn't a game for Zlatan. It was escape. It was revenge. It was proof that the universe was wrong about him, about his family, about everyone who'd ever looked at him like he was less than human. Every goal he scored was a middle finger to Rosengård. Every skill he mastered was evidence that he wasn't just another statistic. Every training session was preparation for the war he knew was coming. The war against poverty, against prejudice, against the voice in his head that sounded like his father saying, "You'll never be anything," the breakthrough. When talent demands attention by age 13, Zlatan wasn't just good. He was undeniable. He'd moved through Malmö's youth ranks like a force of nature, scored goals that made grown men stop and stare, developed a playing style that was equal parts beautiful and brutal. He had the technique of a Brazilian, the physicality of a warrior, and the arrogance of someone who'd survived what would have broken lesser people. Scouts from bigger clubs started appearing at games. Watching this tall, aggressive, supremely gifted teenager who played with a chip on his shoulder the size of Sweden itself, but with attention came expectation. And with expectation came pressure. And pressure? That was Zlatan's fuel. His father showed up to a game once, drunk, caused a scene, screamed at coaches, at other parents, at Zlatan himself. The humiliation could have destroyed him, should have made him quit. Instead, Zlatan scored 4 goals that day, each one more emphatic than the last. Each one a statement. You don't define me. Nothing defines me. I define myself. After the game, Henrik pulled him aside. You okay? Zlatan's jaw was tight. Eyes cold. I'm always okay. Your father is not my business. Football is my business. Henrik recognized something in that moment. This kid wasn't going to make it despite his circumstances. He was going to make it because of them. Every hardship was fuel. Every obstacle was motivation. Every person who doubted him was creating the monster that would one day dominate European football. The decision. Choosing the impossible at 15, Zlatan faced a choice that would determine everything. Stay in school. Get a normal job. Accept the life Rosengård had written for him. Or risk everything on a dream that had killed the hopes of countless kids before him. His mother wanted him to stay in school. Football is nice, Zlatan, but you need something real. Something stable. His father didn't care either way. He was too busy destroying himself to notice his son was about to change history. But Zlatan knew. Deep in his bones, he knew he wasn't built for normal. He wasn't designed for stable. He was created for greatness or destruction, and he'd rather burn out trying than fade away as another forgotten kid from the projects. He chose football, not part-time, not as a hobby. He chose it with the kind of commitment that most people reserve for religion. Every morning, every evening. Every moment he wasn't sleeping, he was training, pushing his body beyond what seemed possible, perfecting skills that would later make defenders across Europe look like children. The academy coaches saw the change. This wasn't talent anymore. This was obsession. This was a kid who'd made a pact with himself. Succeed or die trying. And in Rosengård, that kind of commitment either gets you killed or turns you into a legend. The first glimpse of greatness, 17 years old. First team debut for Malmö FF. The stadium wasn't packed. This was Swedish football, not the Premier League. But for Zlatan, it might as well have been the World Cup final. He walked onto that pitch carrying every broken promise Rosengård had ever made. Every time someone had looked at him like he was garbage. Every night he'd gone to bed hungry. Every moment his father had made him feel worthless. He carried it all. And then he channeled it into pure, undeniable football brilliance. 32nd minute. The ball came to him just outside the box. 3 defenders closing in. A smart player would have passed. A normal player would have tried something safe. Zlatan wasn't normal. He killed the ball with his chest. Spun past the first defender. Nutmegged the second. Left the third one grabbing air. Then placed the ball in the top corner with such precision that the goalkeeper didn't even move. Just stood there, accepting that he'd witnessed something beyond his capability to stop. The stadium erupted. His teammates rushed to him. But Zlatan's celebration was minimal. Just a cold stare at the crowd. A look that said, this is just the beginning. Because it was. That goal wasn't just a debut moment. It was an announcement. A declaration. A warning to Swedish football, and eventually to the entire world. Zlatan Ibrahimović had arrived. And nothing, not poverty, not prejudice, not physics itself, was going to stop him. The hunger that never dies. What drives a person who has nothing to lose? What fuels someone who's already survived the worst life can offer? For Zlatan, it wasn't about money. It wasn't even about fame. It was about validation. It was about forcing the world to see him, to recognize him, to admit that he was more than the zip code he came from. Every game became a battlefield. Every opponent became a symbol of everyone who'd ever doubted him. His playing style reflected his psychology. Aggressive, uncompromising, spectacular. He didn't just want to win, he wanted to dominate, to humiliate. To make sure everyone remembered his name, his teammates were sometimes confused by his intensity. It's just a game, they'd say. But for Zlatan, it was never just a game. It was validation of his existence, proof that he'd been right to risk everything, evidence that the universe owed him an apology, and he was determined to collect. The scouts who'd been watching casually were now watching obsessively. Ajax, Juventus, Arsenal, Real Madrid, the biggest clubs in Europe were taking notice of this impossible kid from the Swedish streets, who played like he'd been designed in a laboratory, specifically to destroy defenders. His first 2 seasons at Malmö produced 22 goals. Not just goals, statements. Each one a reminder that talent doesn't care about your background. Greatness doesn't require permission, and Zlatan was just getting started. The moment everything changed, summer of 2001, 20 years old, Zlatan received the call that would transform his life. Ajax Amsterdam wanted him, one of Europe's most prestigious clubs, the academy that had produced Johan Cruyff, a place where football was considered art, not war. The offer was real. The contract was on the table. The escape from Sweden, from Rosengård, from everything that had tried to keep him small, it was finally here. His mother cried when he told her. Not sad tears, proud tears, disbelieving tears. Her son, the boy who'd stolen bicycles and fought in the streets, was going to play for one of Europe's greatest clubs. His father said nothing. By this point, their relationship was a graveyard of missed opportunities and unspoken resentments. Zlatan packed a single bag. He'd arrived in the world with nothing. He'd leave Sweden with barely more. But the difference now? He was leaving on his terms, as someone chosen, as someone valued. As he boarded the plane to Amsterdam, he looked out the window at the country that had given him everything and nothing simultaneously. A country that had provided opportunity, but wrapped it in prejudice. A place that said welcome while making sure you never felt at home. He didn't feel nostalgic. He felt hungry, because this wasn't the end of a chapter. This was the beginning of a conquest. And Zlatan Ibrahimović didn't just want to succeed in Europe, he wanted to own it. The Throne of Fire Amsterdam, the city of giant Samsterdam, 2001, 20 years old. Zlatan Ibrahimović stepped off the plane into a world that didn't look real. Clean streets. Canals that looked like paintings. People riding bicycles without fear of them being stolen. Buildings that had stood for centuries, elegant and proud. This wasn't Rosengård. This wasn't even Sweden. This was a place where beauty was casual, where wealth whispered instead of screamed. Ajax's training facility was a cathedral for football. Grass so perfect it looked artificial. Equipment rooms that held more than Zlatan's entire neighborhood owned. Teammates who'd grown up in privilege, who spoke 3 languages fluently, who'd never had to fight for anything in their lives. And then there was Zlatan, the kid with a chip on his shoulder the size of Europe. His first training session was a test. Not of skill. Everyone knew he had that. It was a test of whether he could adapt, whether his street football genius could translate to Ajax's sophisticated possession-based philosophy. The Dutch game wasn't about individual brilliance. It was about the collective, the system. The beautiful game played beautifully. Zlatan hated it. Pass, Zlatan. Pass! Move into space, Zlatan. Don't hold the ball. This isn't street football. This is Ajax. Every instruction felt like an insult. Every correction felt like someone trying to cage him. He'd spent his entire life being told what he couldn't do, where he couldn't go, who he couldn't become. And now, at the club that was supposed to set him free, they were trying to change him. But here's what Ajax didn't understand. You can't domesticate a lion. You can only decide whether to unleash it or lock it away. The coach, Adrianza, saw the problem immediately. This kid was phenomenal, but he was also a bomb waiting to explode. Talent without discipline, genius without compromise. A player who could win you games single-handedly or destroy team chemistry with his arrogance. Zlatan, Co said after one particularly frustrating training session. You're incredibly talented, but talent alone won't make you great here. You need to play for the team. Zlatan's response was pure ice. I am the team. The awakening. When talent meets opportunity, something shifted in those early months at Ajax. Something Zlatan would never admit out loud. He started watching his teammates. Rafael van der Vaart, Wesley Sneijder, players who'd grown up in the Ajax academy. Players who understood football as a language, not just a physical competition. They didn't play harder than him. They played smarter. And Zlatan, for all his arrogance, wasn't stupid. He began to absorb, to learn, to combine his raw street power with Ajax's tactical intelligence. The kid who'd only known survival football started understanding the chess game. The player who'd relied on physicality and individual skill started seeing patterns, spaces, opportunities that had been invisible before. It was like giving a weapon a brain. His first season produced 6 goals. Respectable, not spectacular. The Ajax fans were intrigued, but not convinced. He's good, they'd say, but is he Ajax quality? Second season, 13 goals. And not just goals, moments. Moments that made people stop eating their dinner to watch the replay. Moments that got shared in football bars across Europe. Moments that made scouts from bigger clubs start making phone calls. The bicycle kick against NAC Breda, a goal so technically impossible that even teammates stood there in disbelief. Zlatan had received the ball with his back to goal, 30 yards out. Normal players would have controlled it and turned. Zlatan launched himself into the air and struck it with such precision that the goalkeeper didn't move. Just watched it sail past him into the net. The crowd went silent for a moment. Not because they weren't impressed. Because they couldn't believe what they'd just witnessed. Then the stadium exploded. And Zlatan? He didn't celebrate. He just stood there, arms wide, soaking in the adoration with the same cold expression he'd worn scoring goals on broken concrete in Rosengård. Because this wasn't surprising to him. This was expected. This was what he'd been born to do. The transformation from prospect to predator third season at Ajax, 23 years old. Zlatan wasn't a prospect anymore. He was a problem. For opposing defenses, that is. He'd evolved into something football had never quite seen before. 6'5", the technical ability of a midfielder, the finishing of a striker, the arrogance of a king. He could control a ball that dropped from the sky like it was attached to his foot by string. He could bully defenders who outweighed him. He could score from angles that physics said shouldn't work. But more than anything, he played with an intensity that bordered on violence. Every game was personal. Every defender was someone who needed to be humiliated. Every goal was revenge against everyone who'd ever doubted him. Opponents started complaining. He's too aggressive. Too rough. He doesn't respect the game. Zlatan's response, delivered through interviews that would become legendary. I don't respect mediocrity. If you can't handle me, don't play defense. The football world didn't know how to process him. He was brilliant. He was also insufferable. He scored incredible goals. He also collected yellow cards like trophies. He could win you games. He could also destroy team morale with his ego. But here's the thing about elite sports. You don't have to be likable. You just have to be undeniable, and Zlatan was becoming undeniable. Juventus came calling, one of Italy's most prestigious clubs, the giants of Serie A. They didn't just want Zlatan. They needed him. Their aging squad required new blood, new energy, a striker who could carry them back to glory. The offer was massive, life-changing money, a chance to play in Italy's legendary league. To test himself against the best defenders in the world, Ajax didn't want to sell. But they also knew the truth. Players like Zlatan don't stay in one place. They migrate toward bigger challenges, bigger stages, bigger opportunities to prove they're not just good, they're historic. Summer 2004. Zlatan signed with Juventus for 16 million euros. The boy from Rosengård was now worth more than his entire neighborhood. Italy, where legends are tested. Turin, home of Juventus, a city that smelled like espresso and expected perfection. Serie A in the mid-2000s was a graveyard for strikers. The best defenders in the world played in Italy. Every game was a tactical chess match. Every goal required outsmarting people who'd been studying the game since birth. This wasn't the Eredivisie, where talent could dominate through pure skill. This was calculated warfare. Zlatan's first season was brutal. The Italian defenders didn't care about his reputation. They didn't care about his Ajax highlights. They cared about one thing, stopping him. And they had 40 years of defensive wisdom to do it. They grabbed his shirt. They stepped on his feet. They whispered insults in Italian that he didn't understand but could feel. They made every goal a battle won through blood and will. 16 goals in his first season. Good, not great. The Italian media, never kind to foreigners, questioned whether he was worth the investment. He's talented, they wrote, but is he champion material? Zlatan read every word, absorbed every doubt, let it fuel the fire that never stopped burning. Second season, 23 goals, and a Scudetto Serie A championship. Juventus was back on top, and Zlatan wasn't just contributing, he was dominating. But then came the scandal that would change everything. Calciopoli, when champions fall. 2006. Juventus was implicated in a match-fixing scandal that rocked Italian football to its core. Calciopoli, the revelation that one of the world's most respected clubs had been manipulating referee assignments to gain advantages. The punishment was devastating. Juventus was stripped of their titles, relegated to Serie B, Italy's second division. Players fled like rats from a sinking ship. Zlatan could have stayed, could have shown loyalty, could have helped rebuild the club that had given him a platform. He left. Not out of betrayal, out of pragmatism. He hadn't clawed his way out of Rosengård to play second division football. He hadn't sacrificed everything to take steps backward. Inter Milan paid the highest price in Serie A history to acquire him. 60 million euros plus players. A statement signing. A declaration that Inter was building something unstoppable. And Zlatan, he was about to enter his prime. Inter Milan. The golden year's 3 seasons at Inter. 3 consecutive Serie A titles. 66 goals, an MVP award, complete and total dominance. But more than the numbers, it was the way he dominated. The sheer arrogance with which he dismantled opponents. The goals that defied logic. The celebrations that said, I'm not just better than you, I'm from a different species. He'd taekwondo kick defenders who grabbed his shirt. He'd score goals and then stand there, arms wide, drinking in the hatred from opposing fans like it was fuel. He'd give interviews where he referred to himself in third person. Zlatan doesn't do auditions. Zlatan performs. The media called him arrogant. Teammates called him difficult. Fans called him a god. All 3 were correct. This was Zlatan at the peak of his powers. 26 to 29 years old. The perfect combination of physical dominance and technical genius. He wasn't just scoring goals. He was creating moments that would be replayed for decades. The backheel volley against Bologna. The 35-yard rocket against Genoa. The solo goal where he dribbled past 4 defenders like they were training cones. Each one a reminder, he was from the streets. He'd survived poverty, prejudice, and pain, and now he was untouchable. Barcelona. The dream that became a nightmare summer 2009. The call Zlatan had been waiting for his entire life. Barcelona, the biggest club in the world at that moment. Fresh off a historic treble under Pep Guardiola, home to Lionel Messi, Xavi, Iniesta, the pinnacle of football sophistication, they wanted him, needed him. Paid 70 million euros to acquire him, Zlatan walked into Camp Nou like he was coming home. This was it. The ultimate validation, the biggest stage. The chance to prove he wasn't just good, he was the best. But there was a problem. A problem named Lionel Messi. Barcelona's system revolved around Messi. Everything was designed to maximize Messi's genius. And Zlatan? Zlatan was a player who demanded the game revolve around him. 2 alpha lions, 1 small cage. Pep Guardiola tried to make it work. Zlatan started strong, 16 goals in his first season. But it wasn't about numbers. It was about philosophy. Barcelona played collective football. Beautiful, interconnected, selfless football. Zlatan played Zlatan football. The tension grew. Guardiola would give tactical instructions. Zlatan would ignore them. Teammates would ask for passes. Zlatan would shoot. The system required sacrifice. Zlatan had sacrificed enough in his life. Behind the scenes, the relationship with Guardiola deteriorated. 2 strong personalities, 2 uncompromising visions, no middle ground. By the end of his first season, Zlatan barely played in the crucial Champions League matches, benched in favor of Pedro, watching from the sidelines as Barcelona won another treble. Present but invisible, the humiliation burned hotter than any defeat. After just 1 season, Barcelona loaned him to AC Milan, then sold him permanently. The dream had lasted 12 months. The failure would haunt him forever. Years later, Zlatan would write about it in his autobiography. Guardiola wanted players who obeyed. I'm not that player. I'm Zlatan, AC Milan, the resurrection. But here's what separates legends from failures. How they respond when everything falls apart. AC Milan gave Zlatan a chance to rebuild. To prove Barcelona wrong. To show the world that the problem wasn't him. It was them. And Zlatan? He exploded. 2 seasons, 42 goals, a Serie A title, the MVP award, complete redemption. He played with a vengeance. Every goal was a middle finger to Barcelona. Every celebration was a reminder. You can't break what's already survived being broken. At 30 years old, most strikers are declining. Zlatan was still dominating, still scoring impossible goals, still giving interviews where he compared himself to God and nobody could argue. But the years were starting to whisper. The injuries were coming more frequently. The recovery took longer. His body, pushed to extremes for 3 decades, was beginning to send signals. Signals he refused to hear. Paris, Saint-Germain. The King of Paris 12. PSG came calling with an offer that couldn't be refused. Not just money, though the money was astronomical, but a project, a chance to build something from scratch. To be the star of a team being constructed specifically around him. 4 seasons in Paris, 156 goals, 4 consecutive Ligue 1 titles, records shattered, expectations exceeded. Zlatan owned Paris, literally and figuratively. He'd give interviews saying things like, "Before I arrived, you were nobody. Now you're someone because I'm here." Most players would be destroyed for that level of arrogance. Zlatan? The fans loved him for it, because he backed it up. Every single game. But Champions League glory, the one trophy that defined greatness, remained elusive. PSG would dominate domestically, then crumble in Europe. It became a pattern, a frustration, a reminder that individual brilliance, no matter how spectacular, couldn't guarantee team success. 33 years old, 34, 35. The finish line was approaching, and Zlatan knew it. The beginning of the end. Manchester United, 2016. 34 years old, a free transfer. Critics said he was washed, past his prime, a name without substance anymore. First season, 28 goals, FA Cup, League Cup, Europa League. He silenced every doubter. Proved that age was just another opponent to humiliate, but then came the injury. The knee, serious, career-threatening. For months, he worked in silence, rehabbing with the same intensity he'd brought to everything else, refusing to accept that his body had limits. That time had finally caught up. He came back, played a few more games, but the magic was fading. The explosiveness was gone. He was still skilled, still intelligent, but the lion that had terrorized Europe for 15 years was becoming mortal. LA Galaxy, 2018, a semi-retirement move to America. He scored spectacular goals, had moments of brilliance, but it wasn't the same. Couldn't be the same. Then, impossibly, he returned to AC Milan at age 38. Played another 3 seasons, scored important goals, proved he could still perform at the highest level, but Father Time is undefeated. Always has been. Always will be. April 2023, 41 years old. Zlatan Ibrahimović announced his retirement. The boy from Rosengård, the legend who'd conquered Europe, the most arrogant, talented, impossible player of his generation. It was over. The silence after the roar. What happens when the cheering stops? What happens when the player who defined himself through football no longer plays? What happens when the world moves on to the next prodigy, the next highlight reel, the next impossible goal? Zlatan retired with over 570 career goals, 11 league titles across 4 countries, one of the most decorated strikers in history. A career that future players would study, a legacy cemented in football mythology. But legacy doesn't keep you warm at night. Trophies don't call to check on you. Statistics don't sit with you in silence. For 25 years, Zlatan had been in constant motion. Constant battle, constant validation. Every weekend was proof that he mattered, that he was more than the zip code that tried to define him, that he transcended every limitation. And then, silence. The Silent Throne 2023. The last roar June 4th, 2023. San Siro Stadium, Milan. The crowd packed to capacity. They weren't there for a game. They were there for a funeral. The death of a career, the end of an era. Zlatan Ibrahimović stood in the center circle, microphone in hand. 41 years old, his knees wrapped in supports, his face carrying 2 decades of battles. Behind him, on the massive screens, his greatest moments played on loop. Goals that defied physics, celebrations that defined arrogance, a career that would be studied by future generations. "You gave a person from Rosengård the chance to feel special," he said, voice cracking for the first time in his life. "You gave me the chance to defend this club. The club I love the most," the crowd roared. Tears everywhere, grown men crying openly, because they knew they were witnessing something they'd never see again. A player like Zlatan doesn't come around often. Maybe once in a generation, maybe once in a lifetime. He walked off the pitch. The applause followed him into the tunnel, into history, into memory, and then silence. The first year. Learning to be nobody, people think retirement is freedom. The chance to relax, to enjoy the wealth you've earned, to live without pressure. They're wrong. For elite athletes, retirement is death by 1,000 small cuts. It's waking up without purpose. It's watching your body deteriorate without the structure of training to maintain it. It's discovering that the thing that defined you for 25 years no longer exists. Zlatan tried to stay busy. Brand deals, interviews, appearances. He'd show up at events, smile for cameras, give speeches about perseverance and self-belief. People would applaud. Tell him he was inspirational, ask for autographs. But he could see it in their eyes. The slight distance, the polite interest that replaced genuine awe. He wasn't an active player anymore. He was a memory, a reference point, a remember when conversation starter. The difference between being relevant and being historic is subtle but devastating. He'd scroll through social media, something he'd always done with obsessive frequency. His Instagram still had millions of followers. His posts still got thousands of likes, but the comments had changed. Legend. Miss watching you play. One of the greatest ever. Past tense. All of it. He'd become a museum piece while still breathing. The void where football used to be. What does a warrior do when there are no more battles? Zlatan tried everything. He worked out obsessively, lifting weights, running, keeping his body in shape as if he might be called back to play at any moment. But there was no call coming. No coach needing him. No team desperate for his goals. He watched football. Serie A, Premier League, Champions League. He'd analyze games with the same tactical mind that had terrorized defenders for 2 decades. He'd see mistakes and think, I would have scored there. He'd watch young strikers miss chances and feel the muscle memory in his legs. The ghost of movements his body could no longer execute. Erling Haaland. Kylian Mbappe, the new generation. Phenomenal players, breaking records, scoring impossible goals, being worshipped by millions. Zlatan would watch their highlight reels and feel something he'd never experienced before. Irrelevance, not jealousy. Not quite, but a deep, uncomfortable awareness that the world had moved on. That football didn't need him anymore. That new gods had replaced the old ones. This is what nobody tells you about being a legend. Legends are ghosts. Respected but intangible. Celebrated but distant. Forever frozen in the moment they stopped mattering. The family. He barely knew Helena, his wife of over 2 decades. The woman who'd stood beside him through every transfer, every controversy, every impossible moment. Their sons, Maximilian and Vincent. Growing into young men, building their own identities. For 25 years, Zlatan had been present, but absent. Physically there, but mentally always in the next game, the next training session, the next challenge. His family had learned to orbit around his career, to accept that football came first, always. Now suddenly he was home, all the time, with no schedule, no purpose, no opponent to prepare for. What do you want to do today? Helena would ask. And Zlatan would realize he had no answer. For 2.5 decades, someone else had told him where to be, when to train, what to eat, how to prepare. His entire adult life had been structured around external demands. Freedom, he discovered, felt a lot like drowning. He tried to connect with his sons, attended their games, gave them advice, but he could see them being polite rather than engaged. They loved him, but they'd grown up with an icon, not a father, and you can't rebuild that relationship just because your schedule suddenly cleared. The guilt was quiet but constant. All those birthdays missed, all those school events skipped, all those moments sacrificed to chase glory that was now a fading memory. Was it worth it? That's the question that haunted him at 3 a.m. when sleep wouldn't come. October 2025, a regular Tuesday, 44 years old. A Tuesday afternoon in Milano, Zlatan sat in his apartment. Modern, expensive, decorated by designers. Every surface carefully curated. It looked like a magazine spread. It felt like a mausoleum. He scrolled through his phone. The news was all about the upcoming Champions League matches. Real Madrid vs. Bayern Munich. Barcelona vs. Manchester City. The biggest clubs. The biggest stage. He wasn't part of it anymore. A notification popped up. A journalist wanted an interview for a Where Are They Now series. The email was polite, professional, but the premise was clear. He was a then player, not a now player. He declined. Another notification. A highlights compilation someone had made of his greatest goals. Set to dramatic music, nearly 1 million views. Comments full of nostalgia. We'll never see another like him. Modern football is boring compared to this. Zlatan was different, man. He closed the app without commenting. What would he say? Thanks for remembering I existed? The stadium that forgot him, he decided to go to a game. AC Milan vs. Napoli. A big match. Important for the Scudetto race. He arrived early, wore a baseball cap and sunglasses. A half-hearted disguise. He didn't want attention. But he also did. That's the contradiction of fame. You hate being recognized. You hate being forgotten even more. He bought a ticket. Regular seat. Not a luxury box. Not a VIP area. Just a seat among the common people. Something he'd never done as a player. The stadium filled up. Thousands of fans, singing, chanting, wearing jerseys. Most of them were wearing current players' names. Some wore Leon, some wore Hernandez. A few, mostly older fans, wore Ibrahimovic jerseys. Number 11, the past preserved in fabric. A young kid, maybe 10 years old, sat next to him with his father. Who's your favorite player? The father asked his son. Leon, the kid said without hesitation. He's so fast, the father nodded. When I was your age, my favorite was Ibrahimovic. Who's that? Zlatan felt something crack inside his chest. He played for Milan. Incredible player. Scored amazing goals. Is he still playing? No, retired a couple years ago. Oh, the kid lost interest immediately. Focused on the warm-ups happening on the pitch. Present players, active drama, real-time relevance. Zlatan sat there, invisible, a legend unrecognized. A ghost in his own stadium, the game he could no longer play. The match started. Zlatan watched with the tactical mind that had made him great. He saw the spaces, understood the patterns, knew where the goals would come from before they happened. Milan struggled to create chances. Their striker, young, talented, fast, made the kinds of mistakes that would have gotten him benched in Zlatan's era. Poor first touch, weak finishing, lack of confidence in crucial moments. Zlatan could feel his body wanting to move, muscle memory firing, his legs wanting to run, his mind screaming the solution, while his body sat helplessly in a plastic seat among thousands. I could still do this, he thought, better than half these players, but he couldn't. His knees wouldn't allow it. His body had served him for 44 years, had carried him from Rosengård to the top of the world, had executed impossible movements and absorbed incredible punishment. Now it was done. Used up, retired, Milan lost, 2-0. The crowd left disappointed. Zlatan left with something heavier than disappointment. He left with the confirmation of what he'd been trying to deny for 2 years. He was no longer part of this world. He was a spectator, a memory, a name in record books that younger generations would learn about in football history classes. The call that never came back home. Lights off! He sat in darkness, which felt appropriate. His phone sat on the table, silent. He thought about all the calls he'd received over his career. Ajax wanting him, Juventus pursuing him, Inter paying a fortune, Barcelona calling him a dream signing, PSG making him their king, Manchester United needing his experience, clubs fighting over him, coaches designing systems around him, agents negotiating massive contracts, the phone constantly ringing with opportunities, demands, celebrations. Now, silence. Nobody needed Zlatan Ibrahimović the player anymore. Because that player didn't exist. They wanted Zlatan Ibrahimović the brand, the personality, the quote machine, the controversial figure, the motivational speaker, the image, but the thing that had made him valuable, the ability to score goals that shouldn't be possible, was gone. And without that, what was he? A man who'd spent his entire life proving he was more than where he came from. And now he was discovering that he'd become less than what he'd been. The Museum of Memories, his apartment, had a room dedicated to his career. Jerseys from every club, trophies, photos, signed balls, a shrine to 25 years of glory. He walked through it like a museum visitor, touching fabric that smelled like detergent, not sweat. Looking at trophies that no longer felt real. Photos of a younger man who looked like him but felt like a stranger. The Barcelona jersey. The one season that defined failure despite success. 16 goals, but eternal frustration. The only place that had made him feel small. The Inter jerseys. 3 consecutive Scudetti. The years when he was unstoppable. When Serie A belonged to him, the PSG jersey. 4 titles, 156 goals, the King of Paris. But no Champions League? The trophy that would have cemented his legacy among the absolute greatest. The Manchester United jersey. The knee injury. The beginning of the end. Each piece of fabric was a chapter. Together they told a story. But stories have endings, and this one had ended 2 years ago. He stood there, 44 years old, in a room full of memories that felt both precious and painful. This is what remained. Fabric and metal, evidence of achievements that the world was already forgetting. The interview he couldn't refuse. A major football documentary series wanted to feature him. Legends of the Game, prime placement, millions of viewers, a chance to control his narrative. To remind the world who he'd been, he agreed. Because what else was there to do? The interview took place in a studio designed to look intimate, soft lighting, comfortable chairs. A young interviewer who'd probably studied journalism at a prestigious university and knew Zlatan mostly from YouTube compilations. Let's start with Rosengård, the interviewer said. That's where it all began, and Zlatan talked. About poverty, about his father's alcoholism, about stolen bicycles and taped shoes, about the anger that fueled everything, about using football as a weapon against the world that had tried to break him. The interviewer nodded. Took notes. Asked follow-up questions that made it clear he was working from a script, not genuine curiosity. Your time at Barcelona is controversial, the interviewer said. Do you have regrets? Regrets? Zlatan's jaw tightened. The old fire flickered. I regret nothing. Guardiola wanted soldiers. I'm a king. That's not controversial. That's fact. But you only stayed one season. Because I don't stay where I'm not valued. I've never begged for anything. Not food, not opportunity, not respect. You give it or I leave, the interview continued. Question after question about the past. Nothing about the present. Nothing about what he was doing now. Because what he was doing now wasn't interesting. He was existing. And existence, it turns out, doesn't make for compelling television. The social media performance, he still posted on Instagram. Had to maintain the brand, the image. The mythology. Photos in expensive cars. Workout videos showing he was still in shape. Throwback highlights with captions like, when I did things mortals couldn't understand. The engagement was good, not great. Not like when he was playing, but enough to maintain relevance. Enough to remind people he still existed. But late at night, alone, he'd look at the numbers and understand what they represented. Not genuine connection. Not real impact. Just algorithms and nostalgia. Digital breadcrumbs from a feast that had ended years ago. Young players were the ones getting real attention now. Every goal analyzed. Every performance dissected. Every move scrutinized. They were living the drama. He was commenting from the sidelines. Sometimes he'd reply to their posts. Offer encouragement. Good goal, young lion. They'd respond politely. Thank you, legend. Legend. That word again. Respectful. Distant. Past tense. The return to Rosengård he decided to visit. Maybe nostalgia would provide what the present couldn't, meaning. Rosengård hadn't changed much. Still the same concrete towers. Still the same narrow streets. Still the smell of struggle and survival. The place that had created him. He walked through the neighborhood wearing a hoodie. Nobody recognized him. Why would they? The kids playing football in the streets weren't born when he left Sweden. To them, he was nobody. He watched them play. Same broken concrete. Same makeshift goals. Same desperate energy he'd had at their age. But they didn't know who was watching. Didn't know that one of them might escape this place like he had. One kid, maybe 10 years old, wearing shoes that were too big, controlled the ball with unexpected skill. Moved like the concrete was a stage and he was performing. Reminded Zlatan of himself. He almost approached. Almost said something. Almost offered the kind of encouragement that might change the kid's life. But what would he say? I escaped. I conquered the world. I scored over 500 goals. I won 11 league titles. And now I sit in empty stadiums watching other people live the life I can't anymore. So he walked away. Back to the expensive car parked blocks away. Back to the life he'd built that felt increasingly like a beautiful cage. The question. Nobody asks. What do you become when you can't be what you were? Athletes retire all the time. Some become coaches. Some become commentators. Some fade into comfortable obscurity, content with their achievements. But for players like Zlatan, who defined themselves entirely through dominance, through being better than everyone else, through proving doubters wrong, retirement wasn't a transition. It was an identity crisis. He'd spent 40 years being Zlatan Ibrahimović, the phenomenon. The impossible player. The guy who did things that made physics professors confused and defenders retire early. Who was Zlatan Ibrahimović, the regular person? He didn't know. Had never learned. Had never needed to know. Football had been his language, his purpose, his proof of existence. Without it, he was just another middle-aged man with money and memories. Comfortable but empty. Rich but irrelevant. The arrogance that had made him great now had nowhere to go. You can't be arrogant about achievements that grow more distant every day. You can't claim you're the best when you're not even playing anymore. The lion had no jungle to rule. January 2025. The abandoned throne a Tuesday night. Champions League football on television. Real Madrid hosting Manchester City. The biggest stage, the greatest players Zlatan watched from his couch. Expensive whiskey in hand. Alone. The young stars were magnificent. Bellingham, Haaland, Mbappé, Vinicius. They played with the fearlessness of people who didn't know how quickly it all ends. The confidence of people who thought they'd be relevant forever. Zlatan had once been them. Had once believed his dominance would never fade. That his body would never betray him. That the world would always need him. He'd been wrong. The goals they scored were spectacular. The celebrations were joyful. The commentary was breathless with excitement. These were the moments that would be replayed for years. The memories that would define careers, and Zlatan watched. Just watched, because that's all he could do now. The game ended. Madrid won. The players celebrated. The crowd roared. The world moved forward. Zlatan turned off the television, sat in darkness, felt the weight of silence. He'd conquered Europe, won trophies most players only dream about, scored goals that would be studied for generations, built a legacy that was undeniable. But legacies are cold comfort when you're sitting alone, wondering if anyone still remembers your name. The final truth. Here's what nobody tells you about being a legend. Legends are stories we tell about people who used to matter. They're past tense by definition. You can have all the money in the world, all the trophies, all the highlight reels, but if you've defined yourself entirely through what you did rather than who you are, retirement is a slow death. Zlatan Ibrahimović had been a god. Now he was just a man. And the world has millions of men, but it only needs a few gods. The phone stayed silent. The stadium seats remained empty beside him. The calls from clubs never came. Because clubs need players, not memories. He'd escaped Rosengård, conquered Europe, proved everyone wrong, achieved everything except the one thing he'd never considered, preparing for life after glory. Because glory, it turns out, is temporary. Flesh is temporary. Relevance is temporary. Only the silence is permanent. Epilogue. The empty stadium March 2025. San Siro. AC Milan versus Inter. The Derby della Madonnina. The biggest game in Milan football, Zlatan bought a ticket. Section 214, row M, seat 17. Among the people. Among the forgotten. The stadium filled with 75,000 fans. None of them looked at him. Why would they? He was just another middle-aged man in a baseball cap. The teams walked out. Young players with their whole careers ahead. Old coaches strategizing their next move. A sport that had existed before Zlatan and would exist long after him. The game started. The crowd roared. History was being made. Just not his history anymore. He sat there, 44 years old, invisible in a stadium where he'd once been worshipped. Watching a game he could no longer play. Part of a world that had moved on without him. And for the first time in his life, Zlatan Ibrahimović understood the truth about legends. They're not remembered because they're great. They're great because they're remembered, and memory is the cruelest opponent. Because eventually, inevitably, mercilessly, memory fades. The lion had roared. The world had listened. But now the roar was just an echo in an empty stadium. And echoes, no matter how loud they once were, eventually disappear into silence.